This is a question from Rais, which is no money down. Why would somebody sell their business to you and wait to be paid over a number of months or years when they can have a cash buyer, find a cash buyer, and or somebody can get a mortgage and buy that business? I'm going to answer that question for you and show you exactly what you should be doing in order to buy that business no money down. First of all, I want to thank you for all the questions and the engagement that people are partaking in YouTube. I've had quite a few questions and I'm going to create a compilation called Ask Me Anything or Q&A to be able to answer all of those questions one by one. As you can appreciate, it's going to take time, but I will do my best to answer all those questions that I can't answer with one or two sentences by making a video. So hopefully you'll find that useful, and I'll also post a video as text next to the question, so that person can quite easily click the link and look at the answer. So we had a question from Rais Ahmed because I did a video on no money down, and his question is no money down. Why would any vendor want to wait for them to be paid when they can have a cash buyer or a mortgage buyer? And that's a good question, Rais, and it's a very common and obvious question that somebody would ask because generally speaking, in our own minds, we think, oh well, this sounds too easy to be true. Why, if this were true, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, the first thing is not everybody knows about it. The second thing is because in our mind it seems so simple and obvious, we find it hard to believe ourselves, so we don't make that leap into actually doing it. And this is nothing new, by the way. No money down isn't something that came up last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. This has been around for decades. So people like Andrew Carnegie, for example, were using this in their businesses when he was growing his industrial magnitude at the start of the century, when he was buying steel and many of the businesses. So let's start from the beginning. You have a small business owner, works very hard, let's say for 10-15 years, usually on a low salary, usually on low dividends. Most of them aren't making a lot of money. How do I know? Because I'm in the small business sector. I serve a lot of business owners and clients, and usually when they start with us, I can kind of tell, this used to be the case many years ago. They used to have very small businesses and they were making very low profits. Of course, we would work with them, help them create bigger businesses and become successful. And during my conversations with lots of business owners, you can find out when you ask them how many hours you're working, 60, 70, 80, all kind of crazy hours. How much are you making a year? Well, 20,000, 30,000, 40 or 50,000. Well, you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, making 50 grand, for example. Is it worth it? Well, you can answer that question. But generally speaking, the answer is no, because the effort far exceeds the reward. However, what they rely on is capital value, i.e. I'm building the value of my business. At some point in the future, I'll be able to sell it. Well, the news to them is when they want to sell it and nobody wants to buy it for a whole host of different reasons, from anywhere from the business relies totally on them. So if they move away or out of the business, it ain't gonna sell, to poor profits, it's not systemized properly, and the business doesn't have that much value in the first place. So how much they think they're going to get for it and how much it's worth are two very different things. So it's not always easy for small business owners to sell their business. So you go in, Rais, and say, okay, your business is worth X, whatever X may be. Let's use an example, £200,000. The business owner is asking, let's say, 250 for it. You both agree, okay, on a figure of 200,000. So you say it's worth 200,000 pounds. And you say, Mr. Vendor, Mr. Seller, or Mrs. Seller, or Miss Seller, I'll buy your business for 200,000 pounds, but I can't afford to pay you in one go. Now think about it. They may have had their business on for sale for a week, or it could be for the last 3 years. Okay, and the longer they've had it on for sale, the more likely that they would just want to get out even quicker. or they've got other reasons for why they're selling. So maybe it's something to do with retirement, maybe they've had enough, maybe they're moving out the country, maybe they've lost a key customer, maybe they've lost a key staff member. There could be a whole host of reasons why, what motivates them to sell. The more motivated they are to sell, the more likely they are to enter into a negotiation or a deal which works for you and for them. However, you get to the stage, Rais, 200 grand, you know they want to sell, they know they can't sell, it's very hard to sell, so they think, okay, you're the guy who's offering something decent which works for me. Then what you say is, now I can't pay you all in one go, so what I'm going to do is get bank funding for, let's say, 70%. So I'll pay you 70% up front when we complete, so that's 140,000. The other 60,000 I'll pay you over 3, 4 or 5 years. Okay, and generally speaking, those who say no will say no there and then, and you just leave them on the back burner. Some come back to you, some won't come back to you, and that's fine. But those who agree or come back to you, they'll usually speak to their solicitor and say, what do I do? So depending on what you're buying, if there's property involved, they might want a first charge or a second charge on the property, or they'll want some kind of a loan note or debenture on the business or over the business and the shares if you're buying a company, or they'll want you to give a personal guarantee. You got to give them some kind of a security or assurance. I'd say a loan note over the company usually works fine, because you know you're going to pay them. There's no issue about that whatsoever. So you do the deal, the bank gives you 140 grand, the other 60 grand, let's say you're paying 15,000 pounds over 4 years, so you pay them 15 grand each, times 4 gives you 60 grand, they've had their money, job done. Now, you might say, well, or they might say, if you're paying me over 4 years, I want to charge you interest on the 60 grand. Well, pay them interest. If you were to go to a bank and the bank said to you, we'll give you 100% of the money, so 200 grand, but we're going to charge you 4% above base, you'd say, okay, give me all the money and I'll pay you 4% above base. So if that person is giving you 60,000 pounds, if they want to charge you some interest, so be it, because you're paying interest to the bank anyhow. So what's the problem? There is no problem. And this is how you pretty much do it, and I've simplified it a lot to make it really easy, and I hope, Rais, I've answered your question, but that's it. Your other option is they don't budge from 250. So you say, okay, I'll buy your business for 250, but we've got two options here. Either your price, my terms, or my price, your terms. So I can buy your business for 250, but this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to pay you 150 up front, or 140 using my earlier example, okay, and the other 100 or 110 grand, okay, I am going to pay you over the next 5 years. So 20 grand each, okay, or 22 grand each. And they'll say, well, no one's offered me 250, no one's ever offered me the asking price ever. So this guy wants to buy it, I'll have to wait 5 years, I've got the loan note, okay, seems like a pretty decent guy, which I know you are, Rais, and what's not to like? So you do the deal. Now, that business is making certain profit. Let's use the example of, let's say they're making 80 grand profit, so 8, 16, 24, so just over 3 times EBITDA. If it's making 80 grand profit, okay, you're going to pay them 22,000 pounds a year from a business that makes 80 grand. So you give that to them. Let's keep the numbers really easy. Let's say you just give them 20 grand a year. So from 80 grand, you give them 20 grand. You've got 60 grand left over. You now got to pay the interest and the capital repayment on the bank loan. Okay, so you pay that to the bank. You'll still have some money left over. But remember, when you're going into that business, you're also going to go in there with some fresh blood, energy, enthusiasm. So you're going to improve that business. So 80 grand profit over 2, 3, 4 years might become 100, 120, 150, depending on how hard you work in profit. So really, every year you'll increase the profits, and likely, if you work hard enough and smart enough, the increase in the profits will be enough to pay the person you bought the business the annual additional lump sum payment of 20 or 22,000 pounds. So that works too. The problem is people get too fixated about knocking the price down. Somebody asks for 250, they think, oh, I want to pay 100 grand and then start playing silly buggers and try and do a deal and then meet somewhere in between. Forget all that nonsense. You get to an agreement where it's a sensible price, it works for them, because remember, we never ever want to take advantage of the vendor. They've worked hard, they've created a business, they've grown the business, they want to retire now or do something else. So be upfront, be honest and be credible. At the same time, you want to say it's a business deal, so it's got to work for both of us. Talk to them once you've built credibility, once they trust you a bit more because they've had a few conversations with you, you've asked the right questions about their business to show them that you're interested, and then you're not a time waster. You then say, okay, let's spread the payments over a certain period. I've done it a number of times. I've got loads of clients who've done it quite a few times. I know people who are doing this every single day. It works, Rais. Try it. Now, if you think the first person that you pick up the phone to and you're going to try it and they'll say yes, it doesn't work like that. You'll have to speak to quite a few people, and then some will say yes, some will say no. It's just about dissecting. Those who say yes, fine, let's carry on the conversation. Those who say no, not interested, go. But if on the first call you say, I'll buy your business, I'll pay you 200 grand, but I'm going to spread the payments, they're going to run the other direction. You've got to talk to them, understand their business, look at the accounts, look at the business, get to know them, and then once you come to a figure, then say, okay, now let's agree on how this is going to be repaid. By that time they've gotten to know you a bit, it's gonna make it easier. So don't scare them off right at the start. You talk about the payment plan once they get to know you and you get to know them. I hope that helps you, Rais. If you have any other questions, feel free to post them in the comments. Please like so that I know you've liked this video. I can share similar videos with you. Subscribe so we can keep you updated with all the new regular updated content, and post a comment in terms of either a question or let me know the type of content you want, so I'll deliver more content like that to you.